What is up, Earthsmania subscribers? It's Blerd without fear. Welcome back to the channel. All right, today's video, I want to talk about a topic in Star Wars that doesn't ever really get talked about. I know, right? We're talking about Star Wars again. I know, it kind of seemed like I had completely forgotten that I had this whole mission statement that I wanted to talk about more Star Wars, but yet, here we are, talking about
Star Wars, nothing but Star Wars.
What I want to talk to you about is Gray Jedi. Now, this is something I've actually talked about on the channel before in other videos that you are more than welcome to go check out if you want to get a little more insight into what it is that I'm about to be pontificating about. But the main idea here is that Gray Jedis are the midpoint between the light and the dark sides of the Force. You don't really hear the term Gray Jedi thrown around very often, and it's not to say that there aren't Gray Jedi that exist in the current Star Wars canon today, but it was a term you heard more often before the Star Wars canon was upended and all of the books and comics and any other outside of the movie property that existed before Disney had bought Lucasfilm. All of that stuff, that is kind of where you would hear the term Gray Jedi more often than not. There's actually a lot of different terms you would usually hear more often that you don't really hear anymore. Before Disney's purchase of Lucasfilms, one of the more popular Gray Jedi was Qui-Gon Jinn. Yeah, I know, the guy who got pieced up by Darth Maul. Yes, he was considered a Gray Jedi. And I know what you're thinking. You're probably thinking, well, wait a minute, he worked with the Jedi Council. Well, that is where the common misconception about Gray Jedis comes in. Gray Jedis aren't always loners. They're not always so separated from the light side of the Force as a lot of people may want to believe. One of the more famous, and I would dare say more popular, introductions to Gray Jedi is the character Ahsoka Tano. Ahsoka Tano, a character that a lot of people who are familiar with the Clone Wars, as well as Star Wars Rebels, and even some of the more recent portrayals of the character over on The Mandalorian, which, by the way, by the time this video comes out, the Disney Plus Ahsoka series will probably already be out or having just come out by the time of the release of this video, but she is probably one of the most popular iterations of a Gray Jedi, even beyond Qui-Gon Jinn. But getting back to Qui-Gon Jinn, yes, he was a Gray Jedi, and he did work in tandem with the light side of the Force. And while he was not necessarily a self-professed Gray Jedi, a lot of people in the Jedi Council believed that he was. Characters like Mace Windu and Yoda, a lot of them believed Qui-Gon Jinn to be a bit of a Gray Jedi. And what is a Gray Jedi per se? Is it just someone who just kind of sits in the middle? Yeah, more or less. The more specific definition is that it's someone who doesn't limit themselves by only being beholden to the light side of the Force or even the dark side of the Force. A Gray Jedi is someone who is not entirely against the idea of using Force lightning and inherently dark Force power. They're not going to limit themselves to not being able to do that. We've actually even seen other characters like Luke Skywalker, who at the beginning of Return of the Jedi, and this is largely because Luke Skywalker was originally intended to turn to the dark side by the time you got to the end of Return of the Jedi, you notice early on he's using powers largely associated with the dark side, using the Force choke, which typically is more of a dark side ability. A person who is a Gray Jedi, they don't mind tapping in to the dark side of the Force because they believe that the Force isn't inherently evil or inherently good, or that there aren't certain cliques within the Force where, oh yeah, the midichlorians on this side, they only hang out with these other midichlorians over here, and they are the light side of the Force. We don't really with them dark side motherfuckers over here on this side. It doesn't work that way for Gray Jedi. Gray Jedi believe that for one to tap into the Force is to accept all aspects of it. Another interesting thing about Gray Jedi is, for one to use the dark side of the Force, it's always been believed that using the dark side is going to corrupt you, that it's going to make you inherently evil, and that's not the case. Many Gray Jedi over the years have been able to tap into the dark side of the Force with no issue whatsoever, without ever being, tempted or seduced by the dark side. They're not just all of a sudden start getting weird, gangly skin and start wearing big black robes and talking like this, because without talking like this, your transition to the dark side of the Force cannot be complete. Speaking of complete, what would make this video complete is you clicking that like button, because clearly if you're still here by now listening to me yammer about the dark side of the Force, the light side of the Force, and the gray middle of the Force, clearly you're enjoying the content so far, so leave a like. It really helps the channel out, apparently. And also, while you're here, if you're enjoying the content and you want to see more videos like this, as well as check out all my other videos breaking down comics from Marvel, DC, Image, Boom, etc., 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 click that subscribe button and make sure you tap that notification bell so that way you don't miss out on any videos that I put out. Don't make me use the Jedi mind trick on you. I will do it. You want to like, you want to subscribe, you want to tap that notification bell so that way you get notifications on all my videos. You will also share the video. Now, getting back to it, yes, using dark side powers as a typical light side user and using light side powers as a typical dark side user doesn't necessarily make you a gray Jedi. There are other Jedi who have used those various abilities regardless of where they stand in the Jedi Order or on the Sith. We've seen characters like Mace Windu, who is largely recognized as using a lightsaber style that literally taps into the dark side of the Force. And we also know about other characters, like I just mentioned, like Luke Skywalker, who is tapped into the dark side of the Force, and he is not considered a Sith or a fallen Jedi or even a gray Jedi for that matter. And if you go back into the deeper canon, what is technically considered Star Wars Legends, you would recognize characters like Kyle Katarn, who canonically, while in the games, you could pick which side of the Force you leaned into. Ultimately, canon-wise, at least as far as Star Wars Legends is concerned, Kyle Katarn is not really considered a gray Jedi, because it's not just what powers you use, it's your ideology. It's where you see yourself in the overall balance and scheme of things. So while being a gray Jedi sounds awesome from a power perspective, there's really no limitations on what you can or cannot do. It's more of a way of life than it is the power that you wield. While being a gray Jedi sounds amazing and awesome, and probably what I would say, like, if I were a Jedi a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, that's what I would prefer to be. I would rather be a gray Jedi. I would not want to throw my lot in with one extreme or another, because honestly, the Jedi Council is very rigid and in a lot of ways incredibly problematic. And the Sith are also incredibly problematic for completely different reasons, because they're just whole ass evil and largely preside over an army of space Nazis. But the trick with being a gray Jedi is that it's not all sunshine and rainbows. There is some bantha poodoo that comes along with it, and it's that if you are a gray Jedi, while the Sith would very likely be more receptive to accepting your presence, at the same time, you are a threat to what they do. And even if you're useful to them in some way, you'll never truly be granted into the fold unless you fully indoctrinate yourself into the Sith, and with all the treachery and shenanigans that entails. And if you were to throw in your lot with the Jedi Council, it's not to say that the Jedi Council wouldn't accept you. They would, because like I said earlier, there are gray Jedi who have served in the Jedi Order. The problem is that the Jedi Order would never fully trust you, not enough to grant you any position of leadership. No matter how great a Jedi you were, no matter how powerful you became, no matter how much better than Mace Windu you were at being a lightsaber duelist, no matter how much better than Master Yoda you ever became at wielding the power of the Force, they would never give you a seat on the council. You would be kept at arm's length. You would be treated as useful when needed, and for the most part, you'd be Bruno. And we all know
we don't talk about Bruno, no.
Now, with all of that stated, I did bring up Ahsoka Tano earlier, and honestly, I feel like Ahsoka Tano might just be the best depiction of someone who is, by action and deed, a gray Jedi, despite the fact that, depending on where you are in the Star Wars canon, whether it's her early days as a part of the Jedi Order during the Clone Wars, or if you get to somewhere in the middle of her canon where if she's completely rejected the Jedi Council and does not consider herself a Jedi whatsoever, or if you get to what's going on now in, I guess, what would be effectively the current timeline or somewhere there and about close to it, because The Mandalorian kind of is in a weird place. It's technically before the sequel trilogy, but also after the original Star Wars trilogy. Either way, Ahsoka does not see herself as a Jedi. She considers herself to not really be anything. I don't even really remember her ever referring to herself as even so much as a Gray Jedi. She just sees herself as herself. And Ahsoka does tap into pretty much all facets of the Force the way a Gray Jedi would, and she isn't beholden to one side or the other the way a Gray Jedi would be. That said, the term Gray Jedi has become kind of nebulous over the years, and with the rise of Ahsoka getting her own series on Disney Plus and, you know, a greater space in the Star Wars canon, I feel like Gray Jedi is going to gain some form of relevancy again, and who knows, they may even come up with a completely different name for Gray Jedi. But once again, until we get there, we'll just kind of have to wait and see. If you enjoyed this video, do the YouTube thing, like, share, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff, and make sure once again you tap that notification bell so that way you don't miss out on any videos I put out, because I put out videos multiple times throughout the week, plus I live stream every Saturday at 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific. Until next time, let me know what you think about Gray Jedi, and if you have watched any of the Ahsoka series, let me know what you think about it. Keep it plus ultra and sound off in the comments.